I'm very much of the belief that we are right now very early and Bitcoin will become the global reserve asset. And I'm just curious on two things: how we get there and what that will do to society. Those are the two questions that I'm basically wondering about. The other questions are kind of solved for me in my head. So those are the very open question for me still. Do we come peacefully in? Is it like a steady and slow, or is it like there's some Samson Mao Omega candle in there? How do we get there? And also, like, what implication does it have if, I think you wrote the book Hidden Cost of Money, if there's no more inflation? And the spiritual aspect is really interesting in that question. How will Bitcoin actually impact our daily lives? Like, I'm wondering about that so much.
So, you know what? I'll start with the second one, the second question first, and then I'll go back to the first one. And I think that in my book, The Hidden Cost of Money, one of the ways that I look at money is slightly different to kind of just as your standard as medium of exchange that most people look at money. I look at it also as a medium of expression, like language. It's how we express to the world what it is that we value. Just like we use voice to express to the world our thoughts, what it is that we value internally, money is used to express to the world what we value monetarily. And so you can, if you walk into, I don't know, a grocery store and you see someone buying grass-fed beef and organic vegetables, and then another person buying cigarettes and microwave meals, you can see what it is that they value by how they direct their capital. Now, the problem that we face in society today is that because we're facing inflation, our purchasing power is declining, it's impacting our ability to direct capital towards what we value. If by the time I have worked and I've earned some money and then I've saved that money and then I go to spend it, but my purchasing power is diminished 30%, then I have 30% less capacity to show up authentically and direct my capital where I see fit. And then on top of that, it's not just inflation. We see things like capital controls. If you live in China and what you value is supporting your family, and all of a sudden the Chinese government is like, well, you're not allowed to invest in international assets, it's going to be really hard for you to be able to withdraw your funds outside of China. Well, all of a sudden it becomes very hard for you to direct capital towards what you value, which is protecting your family. You may want to protect your purchasing power so you can support your kids in the future, but your purchasing power is being diminished in the local currency. And then finally, you also just have regulations, which are propping up industries and altering how cash flows in society. So it may say you can spend money here, but you can't spend money there. And so what that's doing is it's impeding our ability to express ourselves monetarily. It's impeding our ability to direct capital to what it is that we value as individuals. Now, if I take a step back and look at kind of an analogous situation, well, if as a child, our parents didn't allow us to express certain emotions, like let's say our mum was like, we don't want you to be sad. So anytime you start crying, they're just like, give you a candy bar or try to stop you from crying. Or anytime you're angry, they're just like, we don't want you to be like, you're not allowed to be angry in this house. So they stop you from being angry and they put you in the corner. Well, what is depression? Depression is the depressing of emotions. It is when we're not allowed to express ourselves fully. So as an adult, we don't know how to express those emotions. And so it leads to all of these symptoms, these anxiety, depression, drug use, suicide. And so I would say that the issues we face in society today, whether it is huge environmental destruction because of our consumption habits, whether it is a breakdown in the parent-child bond because parents are having to work more because their money is worth less, whether it is a breakdown in politics because governments can fund themselves endlessly without support from the populace, whether it is a breakdown in business practices because they're incentivized to take risks because they continually are bailed out. I would say all of these are symptoms of people not being able to express themselves monetarily and directing money to where they see fit. And so I think monetary expression is so important. And Bitcoin, on the flip side of that, realigns all of those things. And so all of a sudden, if we can direct capital to where we see fit, well, guess what? Areas of the economy that actually are offering value start to thrive. And not only that, but if you're living in a nation and you do not agree with what the nation is doing, you do not agree with what the direction the government is going, well, if enough people decide, you know what, I'm going to direct my capital where I see fit. Maybe I'm going to leave the country. Maybe I'm just going to store my money in Bitcoin. It becomes very hard for that government to thrive if you're operating on a Bitcoin standard. And so I very much believe that Bitcoin flips all the incentives on its head. At the moment, our incentives towards kind of like fiscal irresponsibility, there's breakdown in connection, life is getting harder. the incentives flip to the other side, which all of a sudden we have more capacity as our purchasing power is increasing. That gives immense benefits to, say, parents. Parents have more capacity to spend time with their kids, support their kids more. It also has immense benefits for businesses. Businesses has to be fiscally responsible. If they're not, if they borrow beyond their means, then they're going to slowly wither away. So it incentivizes value creation. It allows individuals to direct capital to areas of the economy that are actually offering value, as opposed to those that are just being propped up by intervention. And so I think that, to me, it really realigns all of the incentives in society. And that is, I just find profound. To answer kind of your first question, which is, what does it look like actually getting there? That's hard. It's it's so challenging, because I think that the reality is that we've borrowed beyond our means for so long that in order to be able to transition to a new system, we have to live within our means. We have so much debt that if the system was to implode in on itself right now, there would be so much pain. There would be so much carnage. And so Jeff Booth always talks about kind of building a parallel system. And what we're trying to do is just increase the size of that bridge over to that parallel system. And in time, people will realize, those people that are living over there in the parallel system, life seems to be getting easier for them. They seem to be thriving. And at a certain point, the pain of existing in the current system becomes greater than the energy expenditure and the pain of transitioning to a new system. And so what I'm hoping is that we're building out the rails right now. We're building out the custodial, self-custodial features to make it more and more user-friendly. We're building out kind of, whether it's the companies, to be able to onboard these individuals, so that by the time we start to see more of a mass adoption of it, we have the capacity to do so. Because I don't know if we have the capacity to do so right now. And I don't think the user experience, especially when it comes to, say, self-custody, is there yet for the average individual.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always this question, what if 100% of the world all of a sudden wants to go on Bitcoin tomorrow? I think we're not ready for that. I think the rails are not there yet. The custodians are not there yet. The services are not there yet. The infrastructure, it's just not working out right now. Also with what that means for the main layer, and we have to go on the second layer because there's not enough space. So it's good if it's gradual. we want the Titanic to sink slow, and the lifeboat to slowly increase in size with Bitcoin. But one thing that was really interesting what you said is monetary expression. I think we don't think of money as language. We don't think about money being something that is expressive. But it is expressive. It is a language. We use it as gifts, like in Austria. I don't know if it's in America also like that. But if you are like a kid and you have birthday, like you're getting, I don't know, 10 years old, 12 years old, it's custom that the aunts and the uncles give you like 10 euros and 5 euros for your birthday to get you started in life and stuff like that. So there's so many traditions and functions in society where we use Bitcoin not only as, hey, you give me that good, and I give you that as money as exchange, but we actually use Bitcoin like money directly as a language of gifting someone something. There are many different things like that. So fiat is kind of manipulating our language. It's kind of putting a noise into the signal of language. I never looked at it as a language.
Well, it's interesting because I find one thing that I've decided, I live in Canada, and we're about to, I think it's like April 27th, we're about to have our election as to who is going to be the prime minister of the country. Now, the reality on my end is that I don't believe in the system. So, cool, I can vote left or I can vote right. But the reality is, although there's someone maybe I would lean a little more right, I would say that I don't want to direct my energy towards the system. And when we vote, we are expressing what it is that we value, who it is that we value, who aligns most with our values. We're expressing ourselves. And what people often forget is that, well, when we vote, we're actually voting twice. We're voting once for the individual, and secondly, we're voting for the system. We're directing our energy and we're saying we actually support the system. We support the continuation of the process which has led us to where we are today. And so I think what a lot of people forget about is we have a third way of voting. That third way of voting, that third way of expressing ourselves is money. When we direct our capital to what we value, we are saying we're choosing this over this. This is what we value. It's the same. It's just another form of voting. It's another form of expression. And I think people often forget about that. And like, to your point, like when it comes to money breaking down, it's impacting our ability to express what we value. Now, can you imagine if there was regulations in place that basically said on the voting ballot, hey, there's these 5 people, but there's actually regulations, so you can't actually vote for the top 3 people. You can only vote for the bottom 2 people. So just forget about the top 3 people. And that's our monetary system today. It's like, hey, there's industries that we don't believe in. We're going to put regulations that make it incredibly hard for you to be able to go and direct your capital towards those things. For instance, I believe in health and I believe in raw dairy. Well, in Canada, raw dairy is illegal. You cannot go buy raw dairy. So I cannot go and purchase raw dairy to go and support myself, my family, those that I care about, because there's regulation impeding me from doing so. And so this is where I think it's so interesting, is that we live in a world where the government continually step in and they put barriers for people to express themselves, whether that's through money, whether that's through language, through free speech being suppressed, you name it. There's a lot of suppression that we find in society.
Wait, raw dairy, is it like milk directly from the farmer?
Yeah.
That's illegal?
Yeah. So this is the thing. It's crazy that the only way that you can buy dairy is pasteurized dairy that is through kind of the grocery store. There is a workaround. Like I have what's called a cow share in Canada. And so a cow share is if you own cows, you're allowed to drink the milk from your own cow. And so because of that, people end up doing a cow share where they buy a portion of a cow or a fraction. They own a fraction of a cow, a share of a cow. And then you're not paying for the milk. You're paying to service your cow, and then you're getting milk from your cow. And so I get around the raw dairy in that regard. But again, what's interesting is this kind of goes back to, I believe this ties back to kind of the incentives of the system. And you start to see kind of a breakdown when we start to see huge government oversight, increased regulation, it leads to all of these byproducts. And so how did, for instance, I find this interesting because it ties back to kind of money again, but like how did raw dairy become illegal? Well, during the Great Depression, because all of the farmers were struggling financially, they didn't have the resources to be able to actually feed their cows proper nutritious food. And so what did they start doing? They went along to the distilleries and they started to feed the cows the output from the distilleries, the slop, and the cows started to get super sick. But they were still using that milk and selling it. And then so people started to get unbelievably sick from the milk they were drinking from the cows until they realized, I wonder what happens if you heat milk up. And so they started to heat milk up, the pasteurization process, which kills the bacteria. But it not only kills the bad bacteria, but it also kills the good bacteria. So you've now completely destroyed a lot of the nutritional value of milk. And the government comes in and says, you know what? This is good. We're killing all of the bacteria. We're going to actually put regulation in place and say you're not allowed to sell raw milk anymore because it's making people sick. But it's not that it was raw milk that was making people sick. It's that we had a broken financial system that impeded the ability of farmers to be able to support themselves financially, which led to the degradation of the quality of food. And I just find this stuff like so fascinating. Like, again, intervention, monetary intervention, it ends up leading to all of these unintended consequences. And one more quick story I'll share that really kind of stood out to me, and I believe I mentioned it in the book, The Hidden Cost of Money, which was during around kind of like the 30s and 40s in the US, the government decided to go and subsidize grain production. And so it started pumping millions of dollars into producing different types of grains and corn. And so all of a sudden, farmers that were farming, they had an incentive. They would make more money if they were to farm certain types of grain as opposed to vegetables or meat, animals, you name it. And so all of a sudden you had this shift, this artificial shift of farmers move over to grain production. Then as a result of the grain production, we saw a boom in all of the big grain companies. What did this create? Well, we saw Kellogg's, we saw Quakers, a lot of these huge multinational corporations start to explode because they started making a ton of money and grain was super cheap. As a result, we saw things like high fructose corn syrup start to enter the market. Well, guess what we've got now? We've got a massive, huge rate of diabetes as a result of all of these processed grain products because there's unbelievable amounts of excess grain. But not only that, Quakers and Quakers, Kellogg's, and a lot of these other big grain producers, because they were making so much money from all of the grain subsidies and the excess grain, they started to use that excess money to lobby the government. They lobbied the FDA and created the food pyramid. And the food pyramid inverted what we thought was healthy. We have traditionally eaten a more animal-based diet with fruits and vegetables on top of that. And then above that, at the top of the pyramid, we have a little bit of grains. Well, we flipped that on its head, and all these grain producers, given that they have an incentive to push grain, said the base of our diet should be grain, and at the very tip top should be animal products. We should minimize the amount of animal products we eat. And what has happened over the last kind of 50 to 80 years, we have seen diabetes skyrocket. We have seen obesity skyrocket. We have seen heart disease skyrocket. We have seen all of this stuff skyrocket as a result of monetary intervention. We intervened monetarily and we altered the course, the incentives towards what people naturally want. And I just find that profound.
I want to share this with you because I laughed really out loud when you said like we're not able to buy raw milk. It gives me a little bit of hope for Austria because we have something, it's called Abhofverkauf. It means basically buy it directly from the farmer. And there are many farmers. In my hometown, there are like 5,000 people, I think, they are living there, where I originally come from. And there are probably like 20 farmers where you can directly go there and you can buy it. And how it works is either they open like on a Saturday morning and you can actually buy it like in a supermarket kind of a style. But way more common are those things. Wait, here it was. Yeah, it's basically just like a small wooden house and you can go in there and there's like fridges and you just take it out, you see on the price list how much it is and you just throw the money in. So like really trust based. You can just rob all the milk out and all the foods and directly from the farm and go. But it works in Austria for some reason, and that's why it was so foreign for me that you cannot buy raw milk, because I only got raw milk when when I lived up on a farm. I got raw milk every day directly from the cow. I sometimes milked it myself. I mean, we did not milk it like that. We had like those machines for the cow, but I saw the cow. I petted the cow that I got the milk from directly. So that's why the concept is just so completely out of the norm for me. Never heard that.
No, it's wild. Just how different cultures show up. And what's interesting is like I get raw milk now. I've had raw milk for probably about 2.5 years. And when I have friends come over, I'm just like, oh, hey, do you want like milk in your coffee? I have raw milk. And they're just like, oh no, I don't want to touch that stuff. I would never drink that. And so you start to realize that when you start intervening monetarily, you create all of these regulations that lead to, say, basically the illegality of raw milk or the destruction of red meat in society where you think red meat is bad or saturated fats are bad. The average individual has no idea. They're completely brainwashed. And so I think it's fascinating because for me, what Bitcoin has done is Bitcoin, in a sense, and I notice this with other individuals as well, is Bitcoin leads you down this rabbit hole where you start questioning the money. And then when you start realizing, maybe if the monetary system isn't what it seems, what other systems aren't what they seem? And then you start digging into the healthcare industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the educational industry. And you're just like, oh my God, like we're living in this world that is a bit of a facade. And it is almost like, I think there's a reason why Bitcoiners resonate with this whole idea of the matrix. Do you want to take the red pill or the blue pill? Do you want to know you're in the simulation? Or would you rather step outside or would you rather just be sucked in and just absorbed into the simulation, have no idea? And I think a lot of Bitcoiners, what I really admire is we're truth seeking. We're always just trying to be able to seek truth. And I don't see it as in like a negative thing or a fearful thing that it's just like, oh my God, the world is so broken. I look at it more from the perspective that if we're trying to seek truth, that's the only way at which we can alter our trajectory towards actually creating a society of prosperity, actually creating connection and community, and actually moving towards a society where we're healthy and we're thriving. Because if we're not seeking truth, then we're going to be continually blinded by propaganda or this intervention.
It's that mind virus. Like the government is trying to do something, and it actually alters the way we think. And it's so... And I catch myself also doing that. We hold opinions that we heard multiple times, but we never really researched. And because we heard it multiple times, we never questioned it. And that's why we hold that opinion, but we never actually questioned this thing. And I see it so many times. So when someone says something that I highly disagree with, I just ask them many why questions. And usually after the third why question, they don't really have more substance because they never really thought about why this is like that. They just adopted that thinking. So that's what I call it mind virus. It's the matrix is like staying in the system. It's more convenient, just like going with the flow. I get that. But stepping outside is just makes a lot of fun if you're outside of that, and then you're all of the sudden questioning things. So I think Bitcoiner, because there's such a big thing breaking with money, they naturally question other things. But I catch myself also sometimes holding opinions that I just heard a lot but never question. Like it still happens. Thank you for watching this video. This was only a snippet of the podcast. And if you want to watch the full episode and get all of the context of this episode, you can click right here or here. Oh, maybe also here.